They were in a cage, which wasn't too small, but it wasn't anything like this or the cage they had after that. And Gabby succumbed to what they thought was endometriosis. And they did this invasive exploratory surgery, and there was no way she was bouncing back from that. So they had to put her down. And then after that, you know, I was crying and being crazy, and they said, all right, Gibby, come on. And they ended up using her as a cadaver for the anatomy department. Which, you know, what was I going to say to that? You know, valuable animal, so I was told. And then Gibby was alone, so I had him moved from his cage. At that point, yeah, I had him moved from the cage he was in to the cage right across from my office, so I could be with him. And I would routinely go in with him, sit with him, comfort him. And he was with us. There was a spider monkey also in the next cage next to him. So he was in there for a while, and then they started searching for a mate for him. And they found a zoo upstate that had a female that was being pushed out of her family group. So she came, we named her Georgia, and they didn't take long for them to be okay together. We introduced them from cage to cage, and then we put her in, and she ended up being the dominant one. She was like a crabby-faced, and she wouldn't let Gibby have any food unless she got to it first. And then he would routinely try to go over to her and hug her, and she would push him away. The Gibby, he was trying to hug her. But then they got on together. They worked it out, the dynamics of their relationship. Come on, Gib. Have dots.
Gibby doesn't like me.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
He comes after me because he wants to get me.
Yeah.
If I stand real close,
Don't take it personally.
No, I don't take it personally.
And,
All right, hang on.
Because he became too old, they stopped doing a lot of research on him after a long time. Then they did 1 or 2 experiments, and I felt for sure that he was too old. So then they decided that they were going to, and Georgia wasn't cooperative. She wouldn't keep the clothes on. Gibby would keep the clothes on that he had to wear. Gibby would have to wear a whole outfit for the experiments. They were EMG experiments where they had to have little electrodes in them, and it was attached to a battery pack. And in order for them not to pull out the electrodes, they put clothes on them. I had to hand make his clothes for his long arms. But anyway, so after that last experiment, I think they put him to retirement. And then Georgia wouldn't cooperate, so they wanted to send her away. So they decided, but they had to break them up because the zoo that sent Georgia didn't want her to go to primarily primates. So Gibby ended up there. So he ended up there in that mess.
Which is another lab.
No, that's the sanctuary in San Antonio.
Oh, right. Oh, Texas 12.
That's right. He's one of the Texas 12. And I had no clue. I thought he was at primarily primates. Then I heard bad things were happening. Oh, he doesn't like the... Oh, he does like it. No, he doesn't like
green.
I don't either. I don't either. Here, Gibby, I have the yellow.
The yellow one.
I have the yellow.
You want a yellow? There you go.
He doesn't like the green. And so then one day I get the newsletter from Shirley, and I'm looking through it, and I see the gibbons were taken away from primarily primates and brought here, and I thought, I saw one, and they said, Gibby, and I said, no, that can't be. He was so
How many years later was this?
Well, when did he come in here? I think he came here in 2007?
7.
Okay, so this was about 7 years after I worked with him. So I called her up right away, and I gave her the lowdown on Gibby, and she was so happy. And then I came down 2 years ago with my friend for the first time to see him, and he looks totally different because he was chocolate colored, really dark chocolate colored. So being out in the sun made his fur bleach out a little bit, and I'm so glad to see him in this enclosure. You don't know how great it is, because he was in a cage with fluorescent lights, his lights from the 70s till the day he left there. I saw him after all those years. I recognized him, except for the coloring of the fur. I was thinking, this can't be Gibby. And I went up. He was in the other cage then, in the coral, what do they call that? The run up there. You know,
the corn crib?
the corn crib. No, the runs.
The runway?
Yeah. And I went up on this ladder to see him, and he did what he used to always do. That. And here's your yellow one. Here, there's one more. And he put his arm around me. I went out there early in the morning one morning, and he put his arm around me, and he just made a little sound, like that. And then when I came here yesterday, he was just the same. Well, I was with him one-on-one for a very long time. I mean, I used to hold him in my arms, and, you know, even with the other gibbon, I'd go in there too, with both of them. And they were fine. Bring them
So I have
later.
to
I
ask-
don't have any more, please. Yes, he's my Gibby boy. And it was sad because, you know, to do the experiments, they have to be under anesthesia to get the electrodes in, the clothes on. And after an experiment, I would try not to have to put them back down again to take everything off. So with Gibby, since he was so old, I would just, after we got him, after the experiment, I would try to take his clothes off without putting him down again. But the last experiment didn't work like that, and I had to carry him back, anesthetized him to his room, and I comforted him and sat there with him. But he's my bud.
Yeah.
He's my bud. And you had a lot of stuff in your life, and it's so great to see him here. Because he went through the mill. He really did. I mean, the experiments weren't invasive, but they were invasive enough that he had to be under anesthesia, and he had to wear the clothes, and he had to perform. So, you're going to be a good boy. I have no more dots. I'll give
So
you
it's
a few
come
more.
full circle.
It's come full circle. And
come
what a
full
good circle it is, because I never thought I'd see this day. I never did, because there were a lot of primates that I lost in the years that, you know, even after I left, I lost them to different situations. But he ended up being one of the lucky ones. And I can't believe how resilient he was to last through primarily primates, to be in the lab for all those years and be okay now.
Pretty happy boy.
Maybe you'll find a mate.
Oh,
Maybe
we'll find him.
Maybe someone that's not going to pick on you like Georgia did. Right? Because Georgia used to pick on you all the time. Georgia was kind of cranky. She was kind of cranky. Right, Gib? Right, Gib? She was a cranky girl. Remember when you bit me? He bit me once. You bit me once. You bit me. And
He's
he
like,
used
I'm
to-
sorry.
and he used to sometimes when because he doesn't like males, he would go into if a male came in the room and then left, he would just bounce off the cage and take out his frustration on whoever was there, because he couldn't get at the male.
Oh, he's not wanting
More
to.
background.
He doesn't want to talk about that.
Right.
You don't want to talk about that because we know you want it. Well, he did rip the shirt off one of the researchers once, a long time ago. That's what I said. Joe, no more. Come on, Gibby.
There we go.
Yeah. Oh.
Me and my kid. Me and my kid.
That's
Gibby.
Maynard.
Maynard wants to kill me.
He's my baby.
Gibby. Come on, Gib. Look, Gib.
Say cheese. Yeah, stick some heads out. Some
Come on, yay, good.
Oh, I didn't get that one in time.